All right. Before I actually get into this review, the one thing that I really wanted them to do was actually do a tribute to Chyna. And I will admit they did. And the fan in me is wants to be satisfied, but I'm not. And I'm not gonna blame WWE because I'm not gonna really blame anybody. I want to so bad because there is a lot of people at fault here. I don't feel sorry for the company and I don't feel sorry for Triple H or Stephanie because this is the consequence of life. They're gonna have to deal with this. And unfortunately it had to take her death to have to deal with this. So that's something they're gonna have to live with. But in the very end, and I actually was talking to Elena Nicole on Twitter, and follow her, by the way, because this chick is very interesting. And not to mention, she's a true wrestling fan. I hate to say bring up the word true, but she's truly a wrestling fan. And y'all should follow her on Twitter. But enough with that plug. I was talking to her on Twitter, and the one question that she asked was, "Do you believe that she should get a 10-bell salute?" I honestly believe that she should have. Because Chyna, for me, being a girl of the Attitude Era, growing up with the Attitude Era as a teen on up to where it ended when I was like 22, there wasn't a lot of women to look up to. Because at that time during Attitude Era was the worst possible time to be a woman's wrestler. Because all they cared about was fake breasts, fake hair, fake eyelashes, fake butts, fake everything you can think of, and how many times you can be in Playboy. You had bra and panties matches, you've had mud matches, you've had pillow fights, you've had lingerie, you've had bikinis. It was the most degrading time for women ever, and I hated every last one of those matches. But I will admit this about Chyna. Chyna made women's wrestling worth watching. Yes, she did Playboy. And yes, she was in a bikini sometimes. Yes, she wore a thong. Okay. But the one thing I can say about her is that she had the talent to back it up. Not to mention that this chick beat everybody on the freaking roster up to where she got bored. And she had nobody to fight anymore. She beat every woman in the women's roster. And then she went to go fight the men's. The only female IC champion in history. No one could touch her. Not to mention the fact that she inspired other women to be in the Royal Rumble. And a Royal Rumble, let's be real, is a sausage fest. All you see is men every year. Not that that's a problem. But the thing is that it's inspiring to see a woman actually try to be in the Rumble and look like she's gonna win. She looked strong throughout. And she looked like she was going to win. And she was in the Rumble and she inspired not only Beth Phoenix, but also Karma to be in it too. There was so many things that this woman has done for this company. So many things that paved the way for the women's revolution today. That I feel like that even though you do a vignette, and it was great that they actually did show her accomplishments, as well as showing DX, as well as showing the sincere tweets. It was nice, but it just didn't feel enough for me. This woman wasn't like other people. She wasn't built like other people. She wasn't like other people. She did things far beyond that line. And I felt like she should have gotten more. Not just some half-baked tribute. And I know a lot of people are like, it's great that she was mentioned. It's great that she was mentioned. It's great that she was mentioned. And it's great that that's how you feel. And if that's how you feel, fine. But for me personally, I feel like she was gypped. And this is coming from a woman that really looked up to her. She was completely covered up for years. Even in tributes. And yeah, they mention her now. But I'm sorry, this feels half-baked. It doesn't feel like it's sincere. And I know that this is going to be a lose-lose situation for the WWE. But this is something that they started on their own. This is a consequence that they have to deal with now. Because now fans are taking notice. And now they can't cover it up anymore. So this is a consequence of life. consequence of life choices. Am I going to blame Paul Levesque for what happened? I'm going to say this. He made a bad choice, but honestly, he had to have felt something to not be there. Do I believe that Stephanie should have been there? No. I really shouldn't have been there. I think she shouldn't have been there at all. She should have kept her butt at home. And I'm sorry, this is coming from a very angry fan. Maybe this is a bit of a rant. But if it's something in the eve of a death of a woman that has not only paved the way for the women's division as a whole, but a woman that you literally had issues with, especially the fact that you practically stole her man, I would not show my face. That's just me. Just out of respect. But honestly, y'all, and I'm trying not to make this too long, but I'm going to say this. Am I going to say that the vignette was tasteless? No, it wasn't. It was very well done. Do I feel like it wasn't enough? Yes, I don't feel like it wasn't enough. I felt like she should have gotten a 10-bell salute. Because if it wasn't for her, there would be no Lita, there would be no Trish Stratus, there would be no Beth Phoenix, and there would definitely be no Karma. These women would not be noticed without her. And I'm just saying, even though we have Jacqueline, even though we have Ivory, even though we have Nia Jax, even though we have so many women today that are literally putting their foot in the women's division as of now, without her, there will be no them. And I really feel like they should have done a lot more than what they did. And not to mention, we saw no crowd reaction. So there could have been a chance they didn't even show it on the air at all. It's a possibility they didn't show it live. They just showed it to the people watching at home, and then they just didn't do anything with the other crowd, because they usually show crowd reactions. They did the same thing with Warrior. I think they did the same thing with Savage. But other than that, they showed a crowd reaction after they showed a vignette. And they usually say, thank you, Warrior, or thank you something. And you would hear how the fans would react. No reactions at all. Do I feel like they didn't show it to the fans? That's how I feel. I am not in any way, shape, or form hating on anybody that thinks that was a well done vignette. Because if that's how you feel, that's how you feel. And it was well done. But it just wasn't enough. And I guess this is coming from a fan that loves her so much. I looked up to that woman because there wasn't a lot of women to look up to back then. It wasn't. It was just degrading. But she brought so much worth for a time that just didn't care about women and just saw them as objects. She made women look like they can do it. And honestly, I will miss her. I will not stop respecting and loving that woman. I will always be a fan of hers. But I think they should have done more. Alright guys, besides that intro, this is the go home show to Raw. Well, actually the go home show to Payback. They've actually done a good job of setting up some of the matches, and I do have some interest in some of these matches that are going to happen. And I will say this, the vignette that they've had with Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens was really great. It for those that didn't really know who they were, you kind of had an idea on who they are. They did the exact same thing they did on NXT style. And I enjoyed that. I really did. And I thought that it was absolutely great. And honestly, guys, I guess it's just difficult after the intro to talk about the show. But I will say that they actually were pretty professional with it. Regardless of what happened, they actually were professional with it. And they just decided to move on to the next pay-per-view. And I do believe that was probably, that was the best thing to do. I understand the show has to go on. As much as it really hurts me to see that, I understand. I completely do. But I'm just going to try to be as non-biased as I possibly can with the show. The matches were enjoyable. I will say this. Throughout the last few weeks, from every Raw that I have seen after WrestleMania, the matches themselves have improved greatly. I absolutely love how not only are they fast-paced, the chemistry is so much better, it is fluid, not to mention that, occasionally have a botch or two, but that's human error. But guys, these matches that I have been seeing, in my opinion, are either from 5 to 8. There have been a few that maybe have been a 3. But lately, I do believe it's like they pretty much on that scale from 5 to 8. But my biggest gripe of the night is definitely Apollo Crews. I've already mentioned before in my last video that I did, that just saying video about NXT, how I mentioned about Apollo Crews. Apollo Crews is a type of guy that has not been challenged yet. And they talk about how great of this guy is, how much of a superstar he's going to be. We have not seen his potential truly unleashed yet. He is not even in a feud. They're doing the exact same thing they did with Ryback. And look what happened to him. There's a lot that they can, and Apollo Crews is a Georgia boy. So I usually have mad props with a Georgia boy. Like, I usually get mad respect for a Georgia boy because they're from my same state. The same thing with AJ Styles. He's actually from Gainesville. But other than that, the thing is that Apollo Crews is so much more, but they have not challenged him or put him in a decent feud. He has been wrestling people that are way below him class-wise, like physically. And honestly, it just felt like squash matches. And people just don't care. Let's be honest. Nobody really cared about the debut of Apollo Crews. And nobody really cares that much now. At least the crowd didn't. But this crowd in Hartford was just weird. They just were. I'm sorry. The fact of the matter is that, of course, they're going to have a huge pop for Shane. Because Shane actually is from Connecticut. But that's how every town is. If you're from the same state, they're going to give you mad props. But they weren't that bad. It's just that most towns sit on their hands. And I'm not going to say that they kind of ruined my night. They didn't. But the thing of it is that when it comes to Apollo Crews, he needs a lot more of a challenge. And he hasn't been getting it. And I love me some Stardust, but the Stardust role is starting to take its toll. It's time for him to start being Cody Rhodes again. I'm just saying, unless they do something a little edgier and make him more of a heel with Stardust and then make him more of an intimidating heel, they need to change it back to Cody. They really do. But other than that, the fact that Cody Rhodes lost to Apollo Crews was wrong. I think Cody Rhodes was a bad pick to go up against Apollo Crews because every match that Apollo Crews is in, he wins. And honestly, Cody Rhodes needed that, or Stardust needed that more than Apollo Crews. So I really think they need to start putting him in a feud and actually do something for him. You got Sami Zayn in a feud with Kevin Owens, but their feud was already starting in NXT. Can we have a feud between him and Baron Corbin? But I know that Baron Corbin's down a feud with Dolph Ziggler, but do I really see that going anywhere? Kinda. Not really. But I will say that Dolph Ziggler always does a good job of making people look good. So at least Baron Corbin is able to have a good match, but then he had a horrible match with Austin Aries, and Austin Aries is a vet. That's one of my biggest concerns about Baron Corbin. I think that Baron Corbin just is, he's okay. He's not subpar, but he's just like average. And compared to some of these matches he's been in, he needs to bring his A game. Hence why I think he should be wrestling Apollo Crews. It'll give Apollo Crews something to do and make him look good. And it'll also bring out a lot more out of Baron Corbin. But other than that, Apollo Crews is just there. But the saddest part of the night is that we actually saw Sandow for the first time on our screens. And unfortunately, it didn't last long. He didn't even have a match. It was actually a transition to the feud between Baron Corbin and Dolph Ziggler, which was sad. But I will say this, for the women's division, you got Natalya and Charlotte's feud gaining some momentum. And we saw Emma. But then hearing that comment from Cole saying that, you know, she got back, I'm like, dude, she was at NXT. She didn't go anywhere. But other than that, it was a good match. All the matches were pretty much stellar. I enjoyed every bit of it. I had a fun, good time. They were very entertaining. But the one moment of my night, the highlight of my night, was finally hearing the vaudevillains speak. I love the vaudevillains. Yes, I love Enzo and Cass too. But it's a given that Enzo got the gift of gab, and Big Cass can kind of complement that. But hearing Aiden English is a great talker. He did have a singing gimmick down in NXT, but the one thing that really made me sad was Simon Gotch. Simon Gotch, I have heard him on Countdown. The guy is a snarky heel. But maybe he was a bit nervous being on the mic and he just sounded so stiff. But he could I think it will improve more with time. But he's just not much of a talker. He wasn't much of a talker in NXT. And I think he was just nervous. But other than that, the guy is a snarky Mark. And for those that haven't seen him on Countdown, he's snarky. I like that. But the Vaudevillains aren't getting much love because of their gimmick. But I think that they're actually going to get better with time and people get used to them. That's what makes them interesting. That's why I love the 19th century style. They're going to party like it's 1899. I love that. I did. And I'm really excited about seeing the match between Enzo and Cass versus the Vaudevillains. That was a highlight of my night. And the New Day in the middle, I will admit the New Day actually did make it a little special. So I enjoyed that. But I didn't really care much for the main event. Because here's the thing. We know who the Bullet Club are. We know who the Bullet Club is. I guess say is or are, but we know who they are. You don't have to hide it. But I know they probably don't have the rights to call them the Bullet Club because the Bullet Club is still pretty high in Japan right now. So for crying out loud, give them a name. Not Anderson and Gallows. Just give them a name. I was waiting for them to say a name, something, anything. Do we have to wait till the pay-per-view? But I guess so. They got to have those pay-per-view buys, so we just got to wait. But I could care less about the main event. I knew that Roman was going to knock them all out. And they're talking about, oh, is AJ good or bad? AJ's going to either get screwed or he's going to screw Roman and take the title. But it's still no answers or question. I mean, no questions are answered. I just said that in Yoda speak. But other than that, we still don't know what's going on. And I'm hoping that somehow they're going to clear it up at the pay-per-view. But right now, we don't know nothing. But other than that, guys, my overall view is this. Raw really wasn't that bad. Every match that I have seen for the past 3 weeks have been enjoyable. I have literally been able to go back and watch Raws again and feel happy watching it. I never felt bad at all. I laughed. I was excited. This hasn't happened in years. I feel a lot of good is happening for WWE. And as for my personal feelings towards Chyna, I left that in the intro and I'm done with that. But other than that, my highlight of the night, of course, was the Vaudevillains versus the Vaudevillains and Enzo and Cass in the same ring. I thought it was great. And also the fact that we had Dean Ambrose in probably one of the best promos I've ever heard in my life. Amazing about Chris Jericho. But guys, I want to hear your thoughts about this Raw. Leave a comment in the comment section below or send a video response. I am curious to hear what you guys' thoughts on this Raw and whether or not you guys are excited towards Payback, because I'm going to watch it. And you guys will probably hear you'll probably hear my review either Sunday night or on Monday morning. Either or you're going to hear from it. And as for Power Rankings, I am coming close to actually finishing Power Rankings. I'm going to probably do the Power Rankings for this week to probably sometime tomorrow. And just before Payback, before the end of this month, I will actually have the Power Rankings already done. Probably Friday night. So you guys will know who the top 10 Power Rankers are. I'm not going to do 20 like it does with WWE, and I have my own version. And I'll explain that on Friday, so stay tuned to that. Naturegirl 30 signing off. Peace out, y'all. Later.